Let's understand this in easy way. Snapdragon S1. The very first Snapdragon chip was called the S1. Qualcomm released it back in 2007 and 2008. It ran at 528 MHz. Think of megahertz like the speed of a runner. The faster the number, the faster the chip. At that time, 528 MHz was considered fast for a mobile device. It helped power some of the earliest Android smartphones when the whole idea of a touchscreen phone was still brand new to the world. Snapdragon S2. The S2 came next and brought a small but important upgrade. It ran faster than the S1, reaching speeds up to 1.2 GHz. 1 GHz is roughly double the speed of 528 MHz, so this was a noticeable jump. It also started supporting better graphics and faster mobile internet connections. Phones with the S2 felt noticeably smoother than older devices. It was an early sign that mobile chips were going to grow up very quickly. Snapdragon S3. The S3 pushed things even further. It brought support for 1080p video recording, which means phones could now shoot full HD video for the first time using a Snapdragon chip. Before this, mobile video looked blurry and pixelated. It also handled better multitasking, so you could switch between apps without the phone freezing or stuttering. The S3 was used in some popular Android phones around 2011 and 2012, when Android was becoming the most popular mobile operating system in the world. Snapdragon S4. The S4 was a major leap forward, and this is where things got really interesting. Qualcomm completely rebuilt this chip using a newer design called Crite architecture. Crite was Qualcomm's own custom design, which made the chip faster and more power efficient at the same time. It came in different versions, Play, Plus, Pro, and Prime, each one more powerful than the last. The S4 Pro, in particular, was used in flagship phones like the HTC One X and early Nexus devices. This chip is what made Snapdragon a serious, respected name in the smartphone industry. Snapdragon 200 series. After the S series, Qualcomm reorganized everything into clean numbered series. The 200 series was built specifically for the most affordable smartphones on the market. These chips are basic but reliable. They get the job done without costing a lot of money to manufacture. They handle calls, texts, social media scrolling, and light browsing without any problem. You find them in entry-level phones sold in developing countries like India, Brazil, and across Africa, where price matters far more than raw performance. Millions of people got their first smartphone experience thanks to the 200 series. Snapdragon 400 series. The 400 series sits just above the 200 series and offers a noticeably better experience. These chips support features like LTE Internet, which is the fast 4G connection most people use every day. They also enable better cameras, smoother app performance, and longer battery life compared to the 200 series. Phones in the $100 to $200 range often use 400 series chips. For most everyday users who just want a reliable phone that works well without breaking the bank, this level of power is genuinely more than enough. The Snapdragon 439 and 460 were two of the most popular chips in this family. Snapdragon 600 series. The 600 series was Qualcomm's answer for mid-range phones that want to feel almost premium. The Snapdragon 600 launched the series strong, but the real star was the Snapdragon 625. The 625 became almost legendary in the tech world because it offered great battery life and smooth everyday performance at the same time, something that was very hard to achieve back then. It used a 14-nanometer process, which made it very efficient. Many phones from brands like Xiaomi, Motorola, and Nokia used 600 series chips for years. These chips proved to millions of users that you do not need to spend a lot of money to get a genuinely good smartphone experience. Snapdragon 700 series. The 700 series was introduced to bridge the growing gap between mid-range and flagship phones. Qualcomm wanted to give people some premium features without the premium price tag. The Snapdragon 730 and 750 were highlights of this family. The 730 brought better camera processing and a stronger GPU for gaming. The 750 added 5G connectivity, which was a huge deal for a phone in the mid-range price bracket. Think of the 700 series as the smart middle ground, not the cheapest, not the most expensive, but very thoughtfully balanced for people who want the best value for their money. Snapdragon 800, the first true flagship. The Snapdragon 800 arrived in 2013 and genuinely changed what people expected from a smartphone. It was the first mobile chip to hit a clock speed of 2.3 GHz. To put that in perspective, that is more than 4 times faster than the original S1. It supported 4K video recording at a time when almost no phone or even most cameras were doing that. It also packed a much more powerful graphics unit called the Adreno 330, making mobile gaming look better than it ever had before. This chip powered phones like the Samsung Galaxy S4 LTE and the Sony Xperia Z2, and it set a completely new standard for the whole industry. Snapdragon 801 and 805. Qualcomm quickly followed up with the 801 and 805 because they knew the momentum was strong. The 801 was a refined and faster version of the 800, running more efficiently and hitting higher clock speeds. It powered some of the most iconic phones of 2014, including the Samsung Galaxy S5 and the OnePlus One. The 805 then pushed graphics performance even higher and added support for ultra-high-definition displays, meaning screens that are incredibly sharp and detailed. The LG G3 and Samsung Galaxy Note 4 used the 805. Together, these two chips cemented Snapdragon as the go-to choice for flagship Android phones. Snapdragon 810. The Snapdragon 810 is famous for all the wrong reasons, and it is one of the most talked about chips in mobile history. Qualcomm tried something ambitious. They used a new type of CPU cores called ARM Cortex-A57 instead of their own custom Crite design. But these cores generated a lot of heat under pressure. Phones with the 810 would get extremely hot during gaming or video recording, and then automatically slow themselves down to cool off. This is called thermal throttling, and it made phones feel sluggish right when you needed them most. Samsung looked at the situation and completely skipped the 810 for their Galaxy S6, choosing to use their own chip instead. The 810 was a painful but important lesson for Qualcomm about balancing raw power with real-world usability. Snapdragon 820 and 821. After the 810 disaster, the entire tech world was watching closely to see what Qualcomm would do next. They came back with the 820 and it was a stunning turnaround. Qualcomm went back to designing their own custom CPU cores, this time called Cryo. The 820 ran cooler, faster, and more efficiently than anything they had made before. The 821 came shortly after as a slightly overclocked version of the same great design. Together, they powered some of the best phones of 2016, the OnePlus 3, the Samsung Galaxy S7 in several markets, and the Google Pixel. People who had written off Qualcomm after the 810 had to admit this was an incredible comeback. Snapdragon 835. The 835 was the first Snapdragon chip ever built on a 10-nanometer manufacturing process. To understand why this matters, imagine fitting even more transistors into the same tiny space. More transistors packed tighter means more performance and less battery drain. The 835 was incredibly efficient for its time. It powered the Samsung Galaxy S8 and the Google Pixel 2, both of which were praised for their excellent battery life. The 835 also brought better support for virtual reality and augmented reality experiences, making it a favorite for developers building next-generation apps. Many people consider this the chip that truly made Snapdragon world-class. Snapdragon 845. The 845 arrived in 2018 and quickly became one of the most beloved chips Qualcomm has ever made. It improved on the 835 in every single way. A faster CPU called Cryo 385, a better GPU called Adreno 630, and a smarter AI processing engine. The camera performance jumped significantly, allowing phones to capture better photos in low light. It was used in flagship phones from almost every major brand that year, including the OnePlus 6, Samsung Galaxy S9, and Xiaomi Mi 8. Even years after its release, phones running the 845 still feel fast and capable for daily tasks. It is the kind of chip people look back on and call a genuine classic. Snapdragon 855 and 855 Plus. The 855 introduced something that would define the next era of smartphones: a dedicated AI engine called the Hexagon 690. Think of this like a special worker inside the chip whose only job is to handle artificial intelligence tasks. Things like recognizing faces to unlock your phone, automatically improving your photos, and understanding your voice commands all became dramatically faster. The chip also introduced support for Wi-Fi 6, which is the latest and fastest version of wireless internet. The 855 Plus came as a gaming-focused upgrade with a higher clock speed, and it was especially popular in dedicated gaming phones from Asus and Xiaomi. This was the chip that made on-device AI a normal expectation rather than a special feature. Snapdragon 865 and 865 Plus. The 865 was Qualcomm's statement chip for 2020, the year 5G started becoming real for everyday people. It was their first chip designed from the ground up with 5G support in mind. However, there was a catch. The 5G modem, called the Snapdragon X55, was a separate component that had to sit alongside the main chip. This meant phones were slightly more complex and expensive to manufacture. Despite that, the 865 was extremely powerful and appeared in almost every major Android flagship of 2020, the Samsung Galaxy S20, OnePlus 8 Pro, and Xiaomi Mi 10. The 865 Plus added a small clock speed boost and was favored by gaming phone makers. This chip proved that 5G was no longer just a marketing promise, it was actually here. Snapdragon 888. The 888 was the flagship chip of 2021, and it carried one genuinely historic achievement. For the first time ever, Qualcomm integrated the 5G modem directly inside the main chip itself, instead of having it as a separate piece. This is called an integrated modem, and it saves physical space inside the phone while also improving efficiency. The AI engine also became 3 times more powerful than in the 865. However, the 888 was built on Samsung's 5nm process, and that process struggled with heat management under heavy loads. Some phones like the Xiaomi Mi 11 and Asus ROG Phone 5 got noticeably warm. It was a reminder that packing more power into a smaller space is always a delicate challenge. Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. In late 2021, Qualcomm announced something unexpected. They were changing their entire naming system. The days of numbers like 888 were over. The new chip would simply be called Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. This new name was meant to be cleaner and easier to understand. The chip was built on a 4nm process and was genuinely very powerful. But the overheating problem returned, and this time it was even more widely reported. Phone reviewers around the world noted that the 8 Gen 1 ran hot during gaming and even during everyday tasks like video calls. It once again showed that building the most powerful chip means very little if the phone becomes uncomfortable to hold. Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Qualcomm moved unusually fast to address the criticism. Just months after the 8 Gen 1, they released the 8 Plus Gen 1. The key change was switching from Samsung's manufacturing process to TSMC's 4nm process. TSMC is considered one of the best chip manufacturers in the world, and the difference was immediately clear. The 8 Plus Gen 1 ran significantly cooler, lasted longer on a single charge, and maintained its performance without slowing down. Reviewers who had been frustrated with the 8 Gen 1 gave the 8 Plus Gen 1 glowing praise. Phones like the OnePlus 10T and Xiaomi 12T Pro used this chip and were celebrated for their excellent performance. This was Qualcomm proving they could course-correct quickly when needed. Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. The 8 Gen 2 arrived at the end of 2022, and it was a major step forward in chip design. Qualcomm used a smarter arrangement of CPU cores, mixing different types of cores that are good at different things, so the chip always uses the right kind of power for the right task. Think of it like a team where different players have different strengths, and a smart coach always puts the right player in at the right moment. Gaming performance improved enormously, with the Adreno 740 GPU bringing console-quality visuals to mobile games. AI processing got faster again, camera features became smarter, and crucially, the chip ran cool. Samsung used it in the Galaxy S23 series and praised it highly. This chip finally delivered everything people had hoped for. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. The 8 Gen 3 launched in late 2023 and became the brain behind the best Android phones of 2024. The biggest story with this chip was its massive leap in on-device AI power. On-device AI means your phone can run complex AI tasks completely privately without sending your data to a server on the internet. Your photos get enhanced, your voice gets transcribed, and your apps get smarter, all happening right inside your pocket. The chip also introduced hardware-level ray tracing for mobile gaming. Ray tracing is a technique that makes light, shadows, and reflections in games look almost photorealistic. Phones like the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and OnePlus 12 ran on the 8 Gen 3, and both were celebrated as some of the finest Android devices ever made. Snapdragon 8 Elite. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is the most powerful chip Qualcomm has ever built, launching in late 2024 and carrying phones through 2025. What makes it truly different from everything before it is the CPU design. Qualcomm used their own custom Oryon cores, the same type of cores they originally designed for powerful laptops and computers. Bringing laptop-grade CPU performance into a smartphone was something nobody had done quite like this before. The result is a chip that in some benchmarks actually beats Apple's best chips, which had long been considered untouchable. The AI engine is so powerful it can run large language models, the same kind of technology that powers AI chatbots, directly on your phone with no internet required. The Samsung Galaxy S25 series, Xiaomi 15 Pro, and OnePlus 13 all use the 8 Elite, and they represent the absolute peak of what Android phones can do right now. If you find this video informative, consider subscribing, and click here to know about every Android version.